Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 133. So I've got a really big announcement tonight, and as part of this announcement, I'm going to take you through this process of growth that I've been in, because it really brought up a lot of trauma-based fears. And as part of this process, I went back and listened to the series we did just about a year ago where we talked about trauma-based fears. I did multiple shows, like 6 shows, I think, on trauma-based fears, and we talked about trauma healing. And as I was going through this process, it helped me see how I've grown, and it helped me see kind of the ways that I'm still struggling a little bit with those trauma-based fears. And how does trauma healing work when we're confronted with an opportunity for growth and we have to say yes or no to that growth, and it brings up a lot of these trauma-based fears. So I highly recommend you go back and listen to that series. It's really great. It's really, especially if you're in a process where these trauma-based fears are coming up. We did not do a show specifically on scarcity because we talk about that kind of a lot. But during this process for me, I had scarcity fears come up. I had fears around belonging, which we did a whole show about that. I had fears about overcommitment and responsibility. It was so helpful to me as I was working through my current process to have access to those shows and to be able to go back and listen to them. And it has been in my mind for a while to take some of those older shows and move them into the space on Patreon so that you would have to be a Patreon subscriber to access those. I haven't done it yet. I haven't made a decision, but recently I've had a few people tell me how helpful it is to access those old shows. So one of the ways that I might ask you to support me in that would be to join my Patreon community, which is $5 a month. And at that point, I would move some of those older shows to that space. You'd have to be a subscriber. The nice thing about being a subscriber is that I do offer a discount on all my services. My plan is to grow a community. I haven't mentioned it in a while, but it's a great way to join the community, especially if you're not here physically with us in Tucson. Join us virtually. And eventually I'd like to grow that space and really offer some more things there. Offer sound baths, maybe just for the Patreon subscribers. So it's one of the great ways you can support this work and support this show, and eventually maybe have access to some of those old shows that really do serve us. I listened to all of the trauma-based fears shows. I did most of the meditations, and it really helped me through this process of growth that I'm going to talk about in tonight's show. So I have a really big announcement, and I'm going to make the announcement. I'm going to tell you how I got here, and then we're going to talk as I tell that story about kind of how these trauma-based fears came up. And I've got a really cool story about expansion and support from the universe. And that's one of the things I want to say about trauma healing, is that one of the ways you can tell that you're progressing in your healing, no one's ever going to be perfect. If you have a background of trauma, the trauma is going to get triggered. The trick is recognizing that you're triggered, not allowing it to unalign you from what's coming in. In this process I'm about to talk about, I had so much support from my spiritual support team, from the universe. I had signs. I had people showing up to help me and support me along this path. And if I had not been doing this work of trauma healing that I've been doing for so many years, I would not have recognized that. I would not have been able to accept that support. And so that is one sign of growth, is the fact that, yeah, you can still get triggered by trauma, but you don't let it stop you. You feel the fear and you move through it and you do the thing anyway, even though it scares you, and you accept help as it's offered. You recognize that you're being supported in your process. And especially when you are in alignment, which is what we work on every single week on this show. That is the whole purpose of this work, is to be in that alignment with that divine energy, with your soul, to find your calling. When you're in that alignment, things start to happen. Things start to show up for you that sometimes I say, and that I got this from Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh years and years ago. He says something to the effect of, our limited minds cannot contemplate, we cannot really comprehend how amazing we could actually be, how amazing our lives could be if we kind of let go and let God. That's an old 12-step saying. If we surrender, if we step into alignment and trust that we are supported, the things that happen are greater than we can even imagine. And so part of this trauma healing process is accepting help, is recognizing that you are being supported on your path. So here's my big announcement. I am moving to a new office space here in Tucson starting July 1st. So just details of that will kind of be forthcoming. The new address is coming out. I'm going to send an email out. If you're in Tucson, you'll be aware. I'm going to post on social media. I'm going to do some open houses. And this is a space it's larger than the space I'm currently in. It has more space for workshops. It has more space for our sacred sound journeys. And we're going to talk a little bit about how this happened, because it was something that when I talked to my office mate, Michelle, about it, so that's part of my trauma-based fears we're going to talk about, was this fear of talking to her about what was going to happen. The way I presented it was that the universe wrapped up a gift and placed it in my lap. And I felt like if I said no to that, I would be saying no to all of the things that I sit here and tell you to say yes to every single week. I would be saying no to my own growth. I would be saying no to the support that's offered to me. And bravery is a huge part of stepping out of your comfort zone of growth. And having those trauma-based fears come up is natural, but noticing them, figuring out how to move through them and how to do it anyway, feeling the fear and doing it anyway, is an amazing sign of growth, of the fact that you are healing your trauma, that your trauma no longer runs your life. You're not reactive to the trauma. You have the tools to respond. So let me tell you the story about how this came to me, because it's really amazing. So if you did not watch or listen to the show, The Power of Energy Work, a few shows ago, I'm not going to go through all of that, but that lays the groundwork for what happened. So essentially what happened, I had a series of events. Was giving a session to a client, and then I was receiving a session from my craniosacral teacher, Heidi Wilson, and Archangel Michael showed up. And I talked a little bit about how uncomfortable I was with kind of angel imagery and how I have some baggage around that. But he really showed up in a very strong way for me. And through a series of kind of further receiving of guidance and being in sessions with different people, it came to light that he has been my guardian angel since I was a baby. And he actually showed me all of these times in my life where he stepped in to keep me safe, mostly physically, from something really bad happening to me. And so I started to develop this relationship with him and this trust with him. And again, very far outside of my comfort zone. I am much more comfortable with the sort of ethereal beings of light, of dimensional frequency expansion, or the people who have passed on who come to me, or the animals. Dealing with an angel was so overwhelming that if you watch or listen to that show, you'll hear me say that at first I had to see him as He-Man, the old 80s cartoon, because it was just... It was so far outside of my comfort zone. But he kept showing up and he kept giving me this amazing information. And he showed me these times that he really helped me. And as he showed me, I could see how much he protected me, and I could feel how much he loved me. And so I started to develop this really amazing trust for him. And that comes into this story. So I wanted to give a little bit of background. So I went to see my massage therapist to receive a session. His name is Ken, and he works at The Right Touch here in Tucson. And he's soon to be my office neighbor, just a couple buildings over. So I went in for just a regular massage session. And as this worked, it's so amazing. It's one of those things when I tell these stories that I think, I could not make this up. If I wanted to make this up, I do not have a good enough imagination to make these pieces fall into place the way that they did. So the first thing I will say is that I was not looking for a new space other than Michelle at Brightway Wellness, who I'm going to talk about a little bit more later in the show. She and I had been envisioning a new space for ourselves with a larger classroom or two classrooms where we could both teach, because we're both really passionate about teaching. I wanted better parking than the situation we're in. We have a lot of neighbors around us, so there's noise, there's people above us. And then I really wanted a space with a bathroom in it because my bathroom's out and down the hall, and I don't like leaving my client alone in my treatment room to go out and wash my hands before and after a treatment. And especially for massage, for any kind of energetic work, it's really important to obviously have clean hands with your client, but also to wash your hands in an intentional way afterwards. For massage, you got to literally just get the oil off your body. But from a cleansing perspective, from a ritual of releasing and kind of separating yourself from the client, washing your hands and arms with intention is really an important part of that. So it was driving me a little bit crazy that we didn't have a sink in the space. So we've been talking about what we wanted in a future space, sort of in a visionary way, not in a like we're looking for this right now. And I had looked around a little bit for spaces for the three of us to move into, the three office mates, that me and Michelle and Rocio from Natural Inner Healing Wellness, who does hypnotherapy, and everything was so expensive. So it was one of those things like, oh, someday we'll get there. A little bit more background. So I was not looking for a space. I went in to get a massage with Ken. I didn't say anything about any of this stuff because, again, it wasn't something that was forefront in my mind. I just went to receive a session. And we got started and we kind of checked in. And then he said to me, he's very intuitive and he's very comfortable working with archangels, but I had not told him anything about the experiences that I had been having with Archangel Michael. At most, what he knew is that I am a little bit uncomfortable with angel imagery and archangels, but I'm always open. I'm always open to information. So he started doing the session, and then kind of out of nowhere, he said, I'm not sure why I'm telling this, but my guides are telling me to tell you that about one building over, two buildings over from this space, there is I met this man and he's renting half of his building out, and he's an accountant and he's a really nice man. And I'm not sure why I'm telling you this, but my guides are telling me that I should tell you this. And they're showing me this scenario where you meet him. And he started telling me about the space. I went into the space. It's got 3 areas that could be treatment rooms. It's got kind of a big lobby that you could use for classrooms and workshops. It's got a bathroom. And I was like, oh, that sounds nice, but it doesn't really sound big enough for the 3 of us to move into. It sounds kind of like the space we're in now. And Michelle and I really need separate classrooms so we can both teach at the same time. And we don't have to worry about kind of coordinating, which is what we had been looking for kind of down the road. And then he said to me, again, out of nowhere, knowing nothing about what I had been kind of going through, he said, Archangel Michael is here, and he is telling me to let his sword guide your way, to let his sword light your way. And as soon as he said that, I saw this like golden sword that I've been seeing a lot, that I've been actually using with clients that he's been assisting me with when I'm working on people. I saw it point to the building that Ken was telling me about. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And so we finished the session, and he was kind of working, he was doing the massage, and we were kind of processing and talking a little bit about this. And he just kept saying, I really think you should meet this guy. That's what they're showing me. And as we ended the session, he said to me, how do you feel? And I said, well, I feel a little overwhelmed. I wasn't really planning on looking for a new space, and the way the space sounds, it doesn't really sound like I could share it with my current office mates because it's only got the one classroom, and I'm not really ready to jump into my own space, and I'm sure I can't afford it. And already these fears were coming up, scarcity fears and fears about people pleasing, and what will I tell them if I leave my space, and all of that stuff was already kind of coming up. And I said, well, I feel a little overwhelmed, but I was like, but I'm open, and I trust. In my mind, I was thinking, I really trust Michael. He has been showing me how much he's here to support me. And if he's telling me to look, there's no harm in looking. So I actually walked through the parking lot over there because I didn't even have to drive. And I thought it was a Sunday, so I knew the building was probably closed. I thought, oh, I'll just walk around the building, kind of see how it feels, and it had good energy, and I was like, oh yeah, I could see. I was trying to figure out, kind of where everything was in the space just by looking at the outside, and I kind of felt someone approaching from behind, and I turned around, and there was Ken walking across the parking lot, and he said, my guides told me to come and watch you look at this building. And I was like, oh, okay. So he was kind of just standing there, like being supportive, and I was looking around, and I was like, all right. And then he told me the guy's name was on the building. So I thought, oh, well, I'll just send this guy an email and kind of see where it goes. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm not looking for a space, but again, I have said this on the show so many times. I used to have to be hit with a 2x4, metaphorically, spiritually, to receive information. And part of the work of not just this trauma healing, but stepping into alignment and awareness and spiritual processing and all the things that I talk about every week, I am much more sensitive to that information now. I am much more responsive to that information, and I listen, because every time I trust that intuitive information, amazing things happen. So I didn't just blow it off. I was a little bit overwhelmed. Ken came out and kind of supported me as I was looking at the building. And I thought, well, I'll email the guy. It's not going to hurt. And so I did. I sent an email the next day, and he called me, and it was just a quick phone call. And he kind of said, oh, I'll send you the information. And I looked at it, and it was like way out of my price range, especially for me alone. And I thought, well, that's that. And I kind of just put it to the side. And then a few days later, or a week later, somewhere in there, I was doing my halite activation for the group I call my OGs, my original goddesses. And there were, Michelle and Rocio actually weren't there. They're part of that original group, but they weren't able to attend. So it was a small group. And at the end, I started talking to one of my OGs, my original goddesses, because I was a little bit, it was bothering me a little bit that I felt like I was being led, and I was like, well, I'm not going there. Am I really supposed to go here? And I wanted to just kind of process with someone. And so we started talking, and I was telling her about it. I was telling, I thought, well, maybe I'll go look at the space, and the space has been open for a while. So, maybe the landlord would be willing to negotiate and kind of bring the rent down. And she was listening to me and being really supportive. And then she said, I have been thinking about getting myself a space somewhere, just a treatment room somewhere, to start doing the energy work that I do, the craniosacral work, the Reiki that I do. And she said to me, how would you feel if I was willing to split the rent with you, and I could rent a treatment room and kind of support you in this growth that you're being asked to step into? And it was like, all of a sudden, all the scarcity things that were already coming up, it was like, well, wait a minute, if we could get the rent down and she's going to split the rent with me, like, this might really be doable. It might not be out of reach for me. So we arranged to go and see it. We thought, we'll just see what it feels like. What does the energy feel like? What does the space look like? Is it the right kind of configuration? One of the things we were excited about is the fact that it only shares one wall as opposed to the space I'm in now. And a lot of the times when I'm there, the person I'm sharing the space with, the accountant, is not going to be there because I'm there more later in the day, in the evenings, on the weekends. I teach a lot on Saturdays. So it was like, oh, it's not a freestanding building, which is one of the things Michelle and I had envisioned, but it's pretty close. So we went over there. My husband came with, and my OG friend, Jennifer. I think she doesn't mind if I say her name. And you might remember Jennifer from one of my other stories where I picked out my amazing new bowls that I got this year at the Tucson Gem Show. I have my big, beautiful silver bowl here for tonight's meditation. So we went over and we looked at it, and without going through all the details, because the rest of it, the archangel pointing me with the sword part is the coolest part of that story, and the rest of it is just sort of details. But what I will say is that it was just like click, 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 like everything fell into place. Jennifer stepped in. She negotiated with the landlord. He offered us pretty much everything we asked for. The space was pretty much exactly what I was looking for, with the exception that it wasn't large enough for me to move with my current office mates all together, which is what we had in mind. So that's where the biggest trauma-based fear kind of came up. So the first fear that came up was that scarcity fear. And I have worked really hard to let that go. And I'm really good now at recognizing when it comes up. And again, the universe, like I told Michelle, it gift wrapped this present and placed it in my lap, because here I was just trying to get feedback and process with someone that I've come to really trust and know through this DFE activation process. And all of a sudden she stepped up and was like, can I support you? And that serves me because I can have a space and start to grow my client base. And it was like the scarcity, it was like the universe right away was like, scarcity fears? What scarcity? There's no scarcity here. This is abundance. We're offering you abundance. We're offering you growth. Are you going to say no to that? So the next bigger fear that came up, or fears, was this fear about belonging and this fear about people pleasing. I thought, how am I going to tell Michelle this? Because Michelle has been such an amazing, supportive person. She is the first person who is interested in learning dimensional frequency expansion. She invited me into her space to teach at Brightway Wellness here in Tucson. She invited me to come in and start doing the sacred sound journeys in her space. Before I moved into that space, it was her space. And she was so open and loving and amazing. And she has been, my soul sister. And so the thought of upsetting her, disappointing her, of her being angry at me, it was like paralyzing. It was a paralyzing fear. And I didn't know. At this point, I knew I had to say yes to this opportunity, but I didn't know how she was going to react, and I didn't know how I was going to tell her because I was so afraid that it was going to destroy our relationship. And right away, I will tell you that I know that is a trauma-based fear because Michelle is a loving person. She's a person of love and light and expansion who would never discourage me from growing, and who would see, as I was hoping she would, this idea that we're just expanding our network. It's almost like we're going to have 2 locations because she's teaching amazing light and love, and she teaches Reiki, and she teaches all these classes that I don't even offer in her beautiful space that she invited me into, that I started renting in January. And for me to kind of move, I was hoping, and the way it feels to me is that we're really expanding this community of love. That was our intention. And the original idea was that we would move into a bigger space together. But in this way, we're sort of almost providing 2 different focuses, locations of this beautiful light and love that we're both committed to. So underneath the trauma, on some level, I hoped that this would be a feeling of expansion and love, but the trauma fear was so intense. And I was losing sleep. I was having a hard time eating. I thought, I don't know how I'm going to tell her this. And the timing was working out so that we just were not able to connect. And then I thought, oh, she's going to think I'm keeping this from her. Like, all of these things started coming up. And that is how trauma works. That is how trauma triggering works. And if you get stuck in that vicious cycle of triggering, there's this, oh my gosh, I finally found this place where I felt really welcomed and like I belonged and like there was so much love and light, and I'm going to walk away from that and I won't belong there anymore. That was part of it. I finally found this person that I connect with so much that I feel we were mutually supporting each other and kind of growing together. And what happens if she gets mad or she's disappointed and I don't belong with her anymore and she doesn't want anything to do with me? That fear was coming up. Fear of it was just really intense. And I was having to really get centered. That's when I started going back and I started listening to all those trauma-based fear shows, and I started listening to the trauma healing, and I started thinking and realizing, I've got to do this anyway. The universe gave me a gift. How can I say no to this? So Michelle and I arranged to meet, and we ended up having to do a Zoom call just because that's how the circumstances happened. And it just went so beautifully, and she was so loving and supportive and exactly what I would expect if I was not in a trauma triggered state. She responded exactly the way that I would have known she would have responded if I could have gotten more grounded and out of that fear. And it was just, I told her, I started crying and I said, I've been so afraid to tell you this. And I started telling her all of the fears that were coming up. And I said, I love you and I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose our connection. And it was like when you are connected at a loving level, when you are really operating out of this feeling that you are intending for the highest good of all, like she said to me, I'm so excited for you. I want to see this space. I want to see your growth. And that is where trauma trips us up, because in our background, wherever the trauma came from, we were given the message that it wasn't okay to grow, that it's not okay to get bigger, that it's not okay to let your light shine, that it's not okay to set boundaries, to say what you need, to express what you need, basically, which is part of setting boundaries. There's a whole trauma-based fear show on creating boundaries. Sometimes we think of boundaries, especially if we have a trauma background, as these sort of like hard stops. But boundaries, as you grow, your boundaries get bigger. And sometimes part of setting boundaries is speaking up for what you need. And so I had this conversation that I was so triggered about. I was so afraid, and it went so beautifully. And again, it just feels like a beautiful expansion. It's an expansion of the community that she started building, that she invited me into, that we've been building together, that now we continue to build together in 2 different areas. And that was the last thing about this space, that when I was kind of thinking, she and I had a long conversation about being overwhelmed. And one of the things I realized that was overwhelming me was the drive to and from the current office, which is about 20 plus minutes each way. Which doesn't sound that long, but sometimes I'm there and back a few times in a day. And you've got to get there early to set up. And this new space is about 5 minutes from my house. That's another part of this gift. It was like, here's this gift wrapped gift of abundance and expansion and love and light and alignment for the highest good that just fell into place without any real effort on my part. All these beautiful people who stepped up to support me. Michelle, from the beginning of me getting to know her, and Jennifer as my student, and now as someone who's coming into the space with me, my husband being supportive of me kind of making this leap, and then the spiritual support of having this guardian angel who's been there my whole life, who I just wasn't ready to connect with. It's such a beautiful story of what is available to us when we can look past the trauma. Because again, the trauma is going to be there. It's going to get triggered. But as we heal and we make more and more and more beautiful space, and we release those muddy frequencies, and we invite in clarity, and we invite harmony into our system, and we have that beautiful expansion, I would not have heard any of this probably if it had happened a few years ago. I would not have been able to leap into this if Michelle hadn't opened her space to me and said, here, rent this treatment room. And it was a stepping stone. She even used those words. So this is the whole reason that we do this work. That's partly why I'm telling you this story in so much detail. Partly, I'm very excited about the new space. And if you're in Tucson, I hope you will come and see it. And the other thing is, if you're in the virtual space, expansion is expansion. So as I grow and expand here in the physical space I'm in, that is reflected back. That gives me space to grow in the virtual space as well. More classes are coming, more dimensional frequency expansion classes. Online sound healing is coming. In-person sacred sound baths, in-person workshops, online workshops. This is a space where I can grow into all of that. And clearly that is what is for the highest good for both me and for Michelle at Brightway. So she has her space back to teach and to offer the amazing things that she offers. Again, it's a beautiful expansion. And that is, what do I say every week about healing? It is clarity, it is expansion, and it is harmony. So being clear, clearing those muddy frequencies of trauma away. You know, the mud is still there. We're never perfect. But the clearer we get, the more information we get in, and the more we recognize when something's not clear. All of that fear I had, it was like, wait a minute, why am I so afraid to talk to someone who's never been anything but loving and supportive and just amazingly light toward me? That is my trauma talking. That is my muddy frequencies getting stirred up by this growth process. Why am I afraid to grow? That is my trauma history of making myself small, of thinking that I need to dim my light so I don't make other people uncomfortable. Why would I do that in this beautiful community where Michelle and I have both been encouraging other people to do the same thing? Claim your light and let it shine. That is my motto. That is why it's my motto. We're bringing in clarity so we can feel that light, so we can see that light. We let it shine. That's the expansion. And the harmony comes in and just provides such a beautiful support. So exciting things coming, some changes coming, especially in the physical space, but also in the virtual space as I have more physical space, again, reflected in the virtual space because everything affects everything else. And just a really beautiful story about claiming your worth and accepting the gifts that are offered to you, accepting the abundance that is offered to you, and knowing that you are worthy of it.
Are you trying to shop for gifts?
My speaker just asked me if I was trying to shop for gifts. I mean, I just received a beautiful gift. I don't have to shop for them. Recognizing that your trauma told you that you were not enough and that you didn't deserve good things. And that even as you grow, those thoughts are going to come up, and confronting them and saying, I no longer believe that. I have shifted my vibration to such a degree that when gifts are offered to me, I say thank you and I accept them. When abundance is shown to me, I say thank you and I open into that. I expand into that. And that is accessible for every single one of us. That is the whole reason I do this work. Everything that happens to me is possible for you in whatever way it's meant to show up for you. It shows up for all of us differently. But when we bring that clarity in, when we bring that harmony in, when we allow ourselves to expand, the things that are possible are beyond our dreams. I wasn't even looking for this to happen, and it was placed lovingly with ease into my lap. And all I had to do was say yes and then deal with the fears that came up. And I could have run away from that. I could have said, I'm not ready for this. I had all of those thoughts. But because of this work that I do, because of this work that we do together, I knew that I wanted to say yes. And I felt worthy of it on a deep level, which makes me really emotional in a good way. It's one of those things that shows me how far I've come. And if I can do it, you can do it. That is why we are here. That is why I do this show. So, I have no idea what we're doing for tonight's meditation. I think we're just going to see. We're going to see where we go. I have my beautiful silver bowl here that is the largest Tibetan bowl that I own, that I got at this year's gem show. I think it's like a 12-inch bowl. I don't know that I've measured it, but it's really, Michelle and I call it the amphitheater. What it does is that it amplifies intention. And we sat in our current shared space, that was her original space, and we set the intention for the new space we wanted. And we used this bowl as an amplifier. And then this space showed up. And that's the other thing. Things do not always show up the way you were expecting, the way you were looking. We wanted to grow into a bigger space, and that may happen. The community center that she and I both have in mind, that may be coming, and this is a stepping stone to that. When you set an intention and you put it into the universe for the highest good, that is why we use that intention for the highest good. Because I don't know what the highest good is. I just know if I trust, the way that it comes in is the way that it's meant to come in. So how could I say no to that? How could I say no to that gift, even though it came in not exactly the way I was expecting? So I think what we'll do for tonight's meditation is we're going to use this amplifying bowl to amplify some intentions and to ask to release some of those trauma-based fears. Every single person on earth has trauma-based fears. There is no one that is fearless. Fears come up and we see them and we look at them and we move through them. That is what fearlessness is. It does not mean that we don't have fear. It means that we feel the fear and we move forward anyway. So let's see where we go with this. Let's set some intention. Let's set some intention to release fear. Let's set some intention to call in abundance in whatever form that takes for you. Abundance. We tend to think of money and financial abundance. Abundance of time. That was one of the things I talked about, dropping the show down to every other week because I had a scarcity of time. And that's part of this gift. I have more time if I'm closer to home and I'm not driving in my car as much. Abundance of time, abundance of love, abundance of joy, abundance of support. There is so much support available to us when we do this work and when we clear this space and we are willing to acknowledge that we are worthy to receive it. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, we're going to be fairly active, and we're going to start by grounding as we almost always do. So you might want to sit up. Sometimes it's easier to feel grounded when we've got our feet or our bottom on the floor when we're in a vertical position. If that doesn't call to you, you'd like to lay down or get into another position, let your intuition guide you. But if you're sitting up, make sure something is contacting the ground. Feet, bottom, whatever it is. If you're lying down, you might even lie down on the ground. Just start by feeling your connection to the ground, whether it's feet, whether you're sitting on the ground or lying on the ground. Notice the support there. We tend to ignore, we tend to overlook or take for granted the beautiful support of the earth, of that groundedness that is accessible to us when we can get out of our head and down into the physical body, and especially into that lower half of the body. So put your hands on your belly, right at the belly button. Take a nice big deep breath. Let those hands float all the way out. Really let your belly get big here. And then as you sigh that breath out, use that audible ha sound from high to low. Tell your body that it's safe with that beautiful oxytocin breath vibrating the vagus nerve. We're going to do that 4 to 5 times. On this next breath, as you breathe in and let the belly float out, I want you to imagine as that sigh comes out that is coming all the way down through your head and torso and your hips, down through the legs, all the way down into the earth. And with each breath now, draw that breath in through the belly. Imagine that light. We usually draw it in through our head. Imagine it coming straight in to your belly, to your torso from the front. Breathing in, draw that breath in through the front, and then sigh that beautiful breath down into the earth from that center of your body, from this beautiful womb space, this repository of energy, the cave, I like to call it, or the dantian, the hara, below the belly button in that pelvic space. Maybe you've got one hand on your belly button and one hand just below. And again, drawing that beautiful energy and using the breath to draw in energy, to draw in prana, and then sighing that breath out and down into the earth. Start to feel really connected to the earth. You can imagine those roots, like the roots of a tree growing out from the base of your spine, down into the earth, spreading out to the side, not just going deep here, but going wide, giving yourself a beautiful wide base of support. And breathing in, drawing that energy, drawing that beautiful light in through the torso, and then sighing it down into the earth, down deep into the ground, letting it spread out to the sides. And again, breathing in, drawing that energy in through the belly, through that beautiful cave, and sighing that energy down and out into the earth. Start to feel this beautiful flow as you draw in, you draw this beautiful breath and energy into the belly, and you sigh it down into the earth. Beautiful method of grounding here as you're drawing energy in through the torso and then down into the earth. And just breathe through a few rounds of this, in through the belly and down through the lower body into the earth. Just feeling this beautiful flow of energy starting to allow you to come out of that mental space, come back into the body, coming connected to the earth, in through the belly there, beautiful flow of energy, and down into the earth. Letting that flow feel really good, letting it start to feel really natural so you don't even have to think about it. You just feel this flow in through the belly and down through the earth. And then inviting the top of the head, the crown chakra, to open and just widen this flow of energy. So you're still breathing energy in through the front of your belly, but you're also calling it in through the head, down the torso, and then sighing it all out and down into the earth. Breathing in, drawing energy from the front, drawing energy from above us, that beautiful divine light, and sighing it out into the earth. Breathing in, drawing light in from the front, from the belly, down through the head, and then down into the earth. Now think about your back. Now you're drawing energy in through your back as you breathe and down into the earth. So 360 degrees here. We're drawing in this beautiful light energy, and then we're grounding it down into the earth, connecting ourselves in this beautiful flow of energy, in from the front, down into the earth, in from that beautiful divine realm above our head, down into the earth, and then in from the back and down into the earth. We don't pay a lot of attention to the back. Draw that beautiful energy in through the back and down into the earth. Breathing it in through the back and down into the earth. And just noticing the flow here, noticing the vibrancy. I was feeling tired when we started. I feel buoyant now. I feel fueled. I feel connected and supported. So as we step into the next part of this meditation, where we're going to state some really powerful intentions, we're doing this from a grounded place. We're doing this from a supported place. We've opened to our spiritual support team. You might invite them into the space with you. If you're not familiar with that, these are just beings in the spiritual realm that are supporting you. Maybe it's people who've passed on, or animals, beings of light and love, angels, maybe it's dragons and unicorns, whatever comes through for you here. Just invite. You don't even have to know who they are. You can just state with intention. We're going to make that our first intention here. I invite in my spiritual support team for the highest good. All of these intentions, if you can state them out loud, it's going to be the most powerful. But if you're not in a space where you can do that, maybe you come back and do that later. Just state it in your mind if you don't have access out loud. I invite in my spiritual support team for the highest good. Now we're supported by the earth. We're supported by this beautiful flow of energy, and we're supported by these legion of beings that are here to support us, ancestors, the lineage of our energetic work, of our soul's calling, the soul itself, past lives, future lives, all of these beautiful energies in this space here to support us. So we're going to state another intention now. I set the intention to release muddy frequencies of fear. I'm going to say that again and again, if you can say it out loud. I set the intention to release my muddy frequencies of fear. And with any of these intentions, you can add to them. You can take something out. You can change it to suit what feels good to you. We're just setting some intentions here to overcome fear, to release fear. I set the intention to feel my fears and to overcome them. I set the intention that trauma does not control me, and I overcome my trauma-based fears. And if there's a specific fear that's coming up here, you might insert it. Fears of scarcity, fears around belonging, fears around overcommitment and responsibility, fears around people-pleasing, fears around being alone. I acknowledge my fear of fill in the blank, and I choose to release it. I'm going to do a few different versions here. I acknowledge my fear of scarcity, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of overcommitment, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of disappointing people, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of growth, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of being seen, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of not being enough, and I choose to release it. I acknowledge my fear of being too much, and I choose to release it. Add any last fears you'd like to insert here. With that statement, I acknowledge my fear of whatever it is, and I choose to release it. Beautiful. So then for this next part, we've done some intentions to release. We're going to do some intentions to call things in. So whenever we release energy, we want to call in love and light. So you can be very vague with this. You can set an intention to call in whatever is for your highest good and keep it very vague. You can set your intention to call in the opposite of your fear. So if you're dealing with a scarcity fear, set my intention to call in abundance and I accept it. So we'll go through some of those, but we're setting an intention to call in something to replace that frequency of fear, to call in a love-based gift to replace the fear that we've released. I set my intention to call in abundance, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in joy, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in expansion, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in clarity, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in harmony, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in healing, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in support, and I am worthy to receive it. I set my intention to call in love and light, and I am worthy to receive it. And feel free to add anything else here that calls to you. I set my intention to call in whatever it is, and I am worthy to receive it. And feel the shift in your space. Feel the expansion. Feel the lightness in the body. Feel the lightness in the space around your body. And if you don't feel that, that's fine. But know that you have shifted a huge amount of energy by stating these intentions, intending to release that which is no longer serving you, intending to call in that which is for your highest good. Let yourself just be in this space for the last few moments here. Ooh, hi-ye, 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 oh. Say ah-we-oh, say ah-ye-oh. Hi-ye, 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 oh. Say ah-we-oh. Say ah-we-oh. Say ah-ye-oh, say ah-ye-oh. Say ah-ye-oh. Say ah-we-oh. Ah-ye-oh. I call in light and love and expansion. I call in clarity and harmony. I call in abundance, and I am worthy to receive. And I am worthy to receive, and I am worthy to receive. I am worthy to receive. Asashetayo. Claim your light, let it shine, be abundant, be big, be brave and bold and beautiful, and know that you are worthy to receive these things. Take a big, beautiful breath and draw all that love and light in on all levels of your being from all directions. And sigh that energy out and down into the earth, feeling supported from all directions on all levels. Sending some gratitude to your spiritual support team for showing up here to support you in what you are ready to call in, what you are ready to manifest. Releasing that which no longer serves you and calling in that beautiful love and light and abundance that you so richly deserve. Invite them to stay with you or let them go now. Someone is always with you, whether you are aware of it or not. Someone is watching out for you in every single moment of your life, invested in your growth, invested in your expansion, and loving you truly unconditionally. You cannot disappoint your guardian angel, your spiritual support team. They are here for you. Let yourself receive that support. Take 1 or 2 more deep breaths. However they'd like to come through, in through the nose, out through the mouth is great for release. You can release that oxytocin ha sound. Maybe move your body a little bit. Feel all your joints creak and crack as you come back from this beautiful journey into accepting your birthright of abundance and love and light. And releasing that trauma, but knowing that even when it gets stirred up, you have the tools to let that go, to overcome those fears, and to say yes anyway, to accept the gifts that are offered to you, to accept the support and the abundance and the love. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are worthy of so much love and joy and abundance, expansion and growth. Allow yourself to receive it and receive those gifts. Know you are worthy. Take one last nice big deep breath. Maybe shrug your shoulders, move your neck around, and as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for stepping into setting the intention to release what no longer serves you and call in what does. And when it comes, say yes. Feel the fear and say yes anyway. You deserve it. You deserve it. I will see you next week, in 2 weeks, I'm not sure, for our next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and week.